Welcome to Coleman Report Live. I'm Bob Coleman. We're talking Main Street and the small business lender who helps it grow pre-Halloween edition. Lance, good to see you. John Riossy's in the house, American Banker. John, thank you so much. We got some other people we're expecting to drop in. But I want to start out today, gentlemen. I want to talk about the Inspector General and SBA. And every year they come out with their top 10 management challenges. Either the Inspector General got lazy or SBA's doing a great job because we only have 8 challenges this year, Lance.
That's, well, a lot of the challenges are related to pandemic relief, Bob.
Well, number one, shock to no one, SBA's economic relief programs are susceptible to significant fraud risk and vulnerabilities.
Yeah, that is a challenge, Bob.
It is.
And part of it's because of how 2021 pandemic programs rolled out, and we wanted to reach underserved markets, and we wanted to do it quicker and more seamless. And there were more fintechs involved, with absolutely nothing against fintechs, but you know, knowing your customer is how you prevent fraud. And so a lot of these PPP applicants, submitted their information online, and being able to properly vet that sometimes is a challenge.
Examples of fraud: false statements, fraudulent supporting docs, i.e. Photoshop docs, accounts established using stolen identities, corporate and personal identity theft, payroll inflation expenses, misuse of proceeds, and lender fraud. We have received an unprecedented number of OIG hotline PPP complaints, including businesses that did not exist, business owners received a loan but did not use the funds correctly, business owners who laid off employees to reduce employment to qualify for a PPP loan. That's an interesting one. Have you run across that one, Lance?
No, Bob. That's a new one to me.
Yeah. Business owners who refuse to allow employees to return to work, telling them to stay on unemployment. You make more money. Online fraudsters who offer to prepare applications for a fee, and business owners and individuals, again, identity theft. John, 2 thoughts I'd like you to address. Number one, are you following what's going on in England? Because what little I've been following on their bounce back scheme is their fraud is out of control compared to ours.
No, I have heard that. I remember one person talking about that once before, but
probably me.
a little bit out of my network, so I don't know anything more than what anyone else does. But I had a couple comments about reading the report. I mentioned this to Lance and Joseph prior to coming on today, but while I knew IDLE was also, had its problems, I didn't quite realize the extent in the report, and that shocked me a little bit, where they said in there that as many as 50% or fraud could reach levels as high as 50% in IDLE loans of $100,000 or less. Mm-hmm. And the picture will become clear really starting now as payments start coming due. Actually, they didn't say fraud, and I apologize. I conveyed that improperly. They said defaults could reach a level of 50%, and I think there's probably a high corresponding level of fraud when you're talking about 50% default rate. But they did say defaults rather than fraud. That surprised me, and I echo what Lance just said. Knowing your customer is critical, and SBA prior to IDLE didn't have customers outside of the bank world. They worked with the bank. They were in the background, so to speak. Their customers were the lending institutions, and because of the emergency, they jumped out and started serving the public, and obviously there were problems there as well.
John, go ahead, Lance. Go ahead.
Well, the thing that kills me is, yes, it's easy to look back at the program and say there was fraud. And it's easy to look back at the program. If PPP is an example, when you look at the percentage of fraudulent PPP borrowers versus the number of loans that were made, you don't necessarily come up with the same conclusion that they do, because yes, there was fraud in PPP, absolutely, and some of the things that you mentioned in the report are there, Bob. But if you also look at the speed with which the program was rolled out and the massive number of PPP borrowers, the banks did a great job of rolling out, or financial institutions did a great job of rolling out and administering PPP. Now, EIDL was an SBA direct program, and John's right. They really didn't have a customer base other than customers that came from participant lenders. So, they were stepping into a new world, and that may have increased the amount of fraud that took place.
Yeah. John, how big of a problem, we understand, I think the Inspector General is absolutely right. I don't know what they can do in terms of, this is not something that SBA says, oh, we have a problem. They know they have a problem. But how big of a problem is it in your circles? I apologize for leading with the England question. You know, I'm an Anglophile. But the people you're talking to who know about this, non-SBA, but other bankers, legislatures, your community, is this a big problem, or is it, quote, under control?
Well, I think from the bank standpoint, it's sort of under control, because the way the program was designed, they were sort of given a mandate to lend fast, and they didn't have the responsibilities, I guess, or the accountability that they do in the normal programs. So I don't think they were in any sense cavalier about it, but they're, for them, PPP rather, is becoming, I think, more and more, a subject of the past, something to think about and to celebrate, as Lance said, because, a lot of good was done. As I think more and more about the program and the way it was rolled out in February, it was designed in February and rolled out in March, it changed almost immediately. It was rolled out and, as a program where the banks were going to, the one thing that they did have to follow was know their customers, and they were going to use that customer base to get money out to it was an employment program to keep employment as high as possible,
yes,
to fight massive unemployment. And it morphed almost from the start, because almost from the start, the companies that didn't have the tight relationships with banks, the smaller companies, who were desperate as well, raised their voices and demanded that they have access to this program as well. And immediately, the SBA and Congress began making changes. And Lance talked about it. There was a mandate to serve underserved communities that wasn't there in the beginning. There was a decision to allow fintechs into the program that wasn't part of the initial deal. So it changed. It was changed, and it was changed in Washington. A great deal from the way it was rolled out. It didn't last very long in its initial format.
Yeah. Well, and guys, initially when PPP first came out, I was at a different institution at that time, but I served in a capacity of reviewing applications, approving them, and putting them in E-Tran and moving them on to document production. I'm approving loans on customers I knew. I pull a loan up and I'm like, oh, well, I made a 7A loan to that guy, 6 months ago. I know who that is. As opposed to later when they said you've got to serve underserved markets, well, all of a sudden it's okay, we don't know who these people are. We have to rely on the same thing SBA said in the IFRs, rely on borrower certifications that the information is true and accurate. So, while yes, there is some fraud, right now pointing fingers seems kind of,
well, I have two comments. Everybody. Yeah, I have two comments, and hi, Jared, good to see you. We're going to turn to you in a second. And My two comments are, number one, when we interviewed Senator Rubio, he said if we didn't do it, we were going to have civil unrest in the streets. Let's keep that in mind. And number two, it is not that big of a topic in the midterm elections. I don't see anybody pointing fingers at anybody who voted for it. So you
Does
hear
everyone vote for it?
yeah, but I'm talking about they're running against people who could use that as a topic, and it's not a topic. So
It's not, because it was a bipartisan, broadly
right.
supported both sides. So
I tend to be optimistic with John and Lance, and yeah, there are going to be negative stories and people are going to jump all over it, but SBA has it. I know they're working on it. I agree that it's the number one challenge, and they are.
It just seems from my vantage point, this is really, it's an SBA administrative issue, but more than that now, the SBA partners in this particular, topic are law enforcement. They might need the bank for information, for documents, etc. But really, their best partners now are the U.S. attorneys and the other attorneys.
FBI. Yeah, and the only other item on this list, Bob, that jumps out on me is talking about identification of improper payments. That's been going on for years, and it's apparently to the Inspector General, it's an ongoing problem. Mm-hmm. But I actually worked on the project when I was at SBA, IPERA reviews, and yes, there are improper payments. Yes, SBA identifies them, but I'd like to dig deeper in the report and see what
Delaney has the report. By the way, this just came out on Friday, I believe, so this is new. It is attached into your chat in the GoToWebinars, 46 pages if you want to download it. We'll talk about it more. But hey, I want to turn our attention to Jared Johnson. Jared was one of our winners of the Business Development Officer of the Year. He has completed over $400 million with an M in SBA loans over his careers with First Internet Bank out of Indiana. Correct, Jared?
Yes, that's correct. Thanks for having me on.
Congratulations. It was nice to meet you. We met down in Phoenix, and I wanted you on the show, and I just completely switching gears. I want a 30-second elevator. I'll let you go even 60 seconds. What is the one thing you attribute to your success? You're obviously very successful. I love talking about how you do business, but if you can boil it down to one thing, what would you tell our audience?
Yeah, I'd say at the end of the day, I think I just kind of outwork everybody. I know it's kind of a generic answer, but I feel like I don't really, take the time to mess around on Fridays or, I haven't played golf in probably a year and a half. So that's, part of that is because I'm so busy, but that's what I want, right? So I think I just have that drive where, I want to be the best. I want to do more volume every single year. So I don't take the time to kind of sit back and relax when I hit a certain amount. I just keep working. I think the other thing is I'm usually fairly laid back. I don't get mad. I don't yell and scream at people. Try to do what's best for the borrower at the end of the day, whether, that's putting them in a different loan or maybe SBA is not the right fit for them, and just kind of letting them know and taking care of them. Just treating everybody the way they should be seems to work out a little bit better for me in the long run.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead, Lance.
Can I ask Jared a question?
Of course.
Jared, very nice to meet you virtually. Business acquisition loans are going to probably be the largest area of opportunity for small business lenders over the next several years. What, in your opinion, because it says you've specialized, is the one thing that an institution should look out for in a business acquisition loan?
Yeah, I would say probably the biggest thing is the management experience on the buyer. That's kind of the main thing that I see be the reason it doesn't work out. So people try to get into something that really isn't their strength. There's always, a way to kind of make it work in our heads, right? Well, they did this, and they're trying to connect dots as a BDO. You're trying to get things to work. But at the end of the day, if you've got somebody that's trying to buy something in industry that has, no experience and there's really no connection there, it's probably not going to work out. And I'd say that's probably the biggest thing. Of course, there's a lot of other things, cash flow, having some collateral helps. But at the end of the day, if they don't know how to run that business, it's not something you can do kind of on-the-job training. You're in there, you're working it right away. You've got to keep those employees happy and keep everything moving along. And if they don't have the experience to do that, they're going to struggle.
Jared, that's a fantastic answer. I've been preaching. Guys, that resume you collect, dust it off. Take a little closer look at it and make sure they have that experience. Great job, Jared.
Oh, yeah. There's even times where maybe on paper they don't look like they know what they're doing, right? And vice versa. They could look like they've got a great experience. And I'll talk to them on the phone, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting a little nervous here. I don't even know if this is, something that's going to work for you. And then I've had it the other way around where I'm talking to them going, okay, they get it. They could probably take on the majority of anything that came their way. So sometimes it's just the more repetition and the more you do it, the more you can kind of see, who fits that mold and who will work and who won't.
Jared's example under riches and niches, focus in one particular area, become an expert. I love what you said. You could talk to someone and right away you know whether they get it. Well, that's not in the SOP, Jared.
No.
Our applicant must quote get it. So that's
Yeah.
Bob, that's that, when SBA lists must have these 5 things, and at the bottom of anything else that the participant bank thinks is necessary.
Yeah, there you go.
John, you have any questions for Jared?
Yeah, I don't get a chance to talk to the actual lenders that often, and one question I'd like
watch out, Jared. John's with the American Banker. Watch out.
$400 million of volume, I can't imagine how many individual loans that is, hundreds, perhaps thousands of loans over the course of your career. Do you have some that stick out as sort of favorites where you really, help someone? You sort of indicated sometimes you talk to someone who on paper doesn't seem like an attractive candidate, and all of a sudden when you talk to them, you realize that, they get it, as you said. And I just wonder, if there's anything that sticks out of your head, a recent loan or just at any time in your career is sort of a personal favorite that you really take pride in helping.
Oh, man. It's funny because people ask me that, I had a borrower talking to me one day and he said something kind of funny. I didn't mean to be smart back, but it kind of worked. He said, how many of these types of loans have you done? And I said, well, today or in the last 15 years? And then he kind of laughed and went, point taken. And I was like, I didn't even mean to come off that way, but it did. But yeah, I've done so many kind of interesting things over the years that it's hard to kind of really pick just one. I do feel like every year though, I'll do 1 or 2 in an industry that I had no idea made that kind of money or work. Like for example, right now I'm working on 3 wedding chapels in Las Vegas. So it's kind of cool, just something people think of that's funny. You went to Vegas and got married. Well, so kind of working on some of those deals and seeing how they do is definitely interesting. But I would say, some of the things that kind of keep me going, that keep me interested in wanting to do this is just seeing the cool connection of somebody that's worked typically in corporate America for a long time, has done really well for themselves, and they're finally getting that opportunity to buy a business. And then on the other side, seeing a seller who has maybe gotten that business to a certain level, maybe it's been in the family for 20, 30, 40 years, and they're kind of ready to retire and hand it off to this buyer who is going to take it and grow it. And so those deals are always fun. And then getting the call from the buyer, 4 or 5 years later saying, hey, I'm now selling my business. I want to hand you off to my buyer so you can handle the financing. And sometimes they've grown it where it's so big that we can't do anything for them. So those deals are kind of fun. But I'm sure if I really sat down and wrote out, a list of all the different ones, that we could probably write a pretty cool book about all the crazy businesses we work on.
Well, that's great.
That's
Well,
not a bad
congratulations,
idea.
Jared. That, by the way, we're going to, all our winners the last 5 years, we're going to have an event in Vegas sometime next year. I don't know when. And we're still putting that together. So definitely we'll get to reconnect there as well. And maybe someone wants to get married. I don't know. You can.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'll try to get him a discount.
Yeah, there you go.
Hey,
Jared,
Jared, this is Darren from Biz2X. Just one question for you I was interested to hear.
Yeah,
And what's the biggest misconception that you typically hear with some of the small businesses that you work with for SBA? What are they coming to the table with that you spend a lot of time just having to dispel about SBA loans?
Yeah, I think a lot of what our job really kind of is almost educating borrowers on how the SBA loan works. There's not a ton of kind of real detailed information online, and I get a lot of kind of where people think that they understand how it works, or they feel kind of like they're armchair experts or whatever. But trying to explain to them, hey, this isn't FHA lending where every single bank is exactly the same, is probably the biggest misconception. Is that somebody feels like, well, I went to such and such bank and I got denied, so I'm not going to get an SBA loan no matter where I go. And the truth of the matter is, every lender has, obviously to follow the SBA guidelines, but then they've got kind of their own guidelines within the bank of what they're comfortable with. So especially with business acquisition lending, I would venture to say there's probably 4 or 5 lenders that do maybe 70% of all business acquisition lending. And so if somebody goes to the other, thousands of SBA lenders and gets declined over and over and over again, they might feel like, hey, SBA lending doesn't really do business acquisition, but in reality, they just didn't go to the right bank. Same with, some of the other products. So really trying to get someone to understand that there's a misconception out there that every single bank that does SBA lending does it exactly the same and is comfortable with the exact same type of deal. That's just not how it is.
Great. Well, Jared, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your story. And good luck in 2023, and we'll reconnect in Vegas. Thank you. Hey, Darren Hedrick is in the house with Biz2X. Darren, welcome. We're running over a little bit, but that's okay. We're give him a couple minutes. Darren, thank you so much. You are Biz2X is sponsoring the Coleman Report through the end of the year. And Darren, why is Biz2X want to affiliate with the Coleman Report in this show?
Yeah, no, so it's been interesting, for us. And thanks for having me on, by the way. We really got our start, in PPP. Our parent company is Biz2Credit. We've been in the space since 2007 as a small business lender. And during PPP, just like everyone on the call, we have, lots of activity, right? It was a very interesting program. I'm still recovering. I'm still growing some hair back right now. And we ended up launching a white label very quickly. About a week, we were able to do a deployment, and we got a lot of interest in SBA lending. The way we lay out our platform, we try to make it really simple for the borrowers. A lot of what we hear from financial institutions that we white label today with our platform is, they're getting a lot of noise in the platform. The process itself is very complicated. So what we're really trying to do is just make it easier for the borrower, right? We front load some different pieces of the 1919 form, allow them to qualify themselves early on in the process, and we would set the platform up also to knock out some clients who wouldn't qualify based on some of those responses. And we're really just trying to make the process a lot more efficient for SBA lenders, right? There's lots of back and forth on these loans, lots of changes required, different forms of documentation, and so our goal is that the underwriters can stay in the platform, be able to order some of these validation reports, third parties, get all this information back in the platform, and that can help you as an underwriter or a BDO just be able to decision this application a lot faster. And that's been, sort of the bottleneck. And it's a very good time in the market. We speak to banks of all different sizes, non-bank lenders for SBA. Everyone seems to be wanting to get into SBA, right? It's very sexy right now in the market. But obviously,
You would have thunk that.
yeah.
It is,
So-
but you're right.
And trying to find these skilled underwriters, and a lot of your audience on the call, is not easy, right? And a lot of know-how it takes to really understand the process. So we try to help that as well, and just make the underwriters a lot more efficient, so you can handle some of the goals of the organization, which is really to grow the program. A lot of what we hear is trying to go to smaller size loans. We have a lot of banks that say, hey, we would love to get to under 150, right, or under 200. Most of the SBA loans obviously closer to $1 million or greater. And so that's the biggest opportunity that I see working with a lot of banks, is they really want to go downstream. They know that there's this audience there that if they can only just get to them and not have to triple their underwriting team, they would love to be able to qualify more for SBA. And that's really what we help them with, right, is setting up a platform configured the way they want it so that they can be more efficient with SBA lending. So thanks for having me on. Very interesting conversation.
Yeah, well, let's keep you on again in the future. I know we're going to do a webinar, and I'm going to cut you off there. I apologize for everyone. This was our fault in terms of booking too many people, but it was great content. So I owe you 6 minutes somewhere, but
no worries.
yeah,
Thanks for having me on.
thank you all, guys. Great show. Thank you for joining us today for Coleman Report Live and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time.
Have a great day.
Thank you for joining us today for today's episode. If you like today's content, hit that subscribe button to subscribe to our channel and click that bell icon to get notified about our latest videos. Thank you again for joining us today and for supporting America's Main Street, one entrepreneur at a time. Catch you next time.